In a world where everyone is looking for your money up front, doesn't it just make sense to check out a podcast that's looking to give you something for free? Like the music for your content and free music for your film and videos? Look no further. It's the Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the Tim Kulig Free Music Podcast. And I'm your host, Tim Kulig. It is the day after Thanksgiving 2023, and this past week has been a bit of a whirlwind because DistroKid gave me an update that kind of stopped me in my tracks, which kind of sucked, and that was a violation on Spotify for an advertiser that I've been using that apparently uses bots. So I wanted to get right into it this week and talk about cautious selection of your advertising and promotion services online. And one of the first things I wanted to discuss is that anybody guaranteeing streams or listens or subscribers or anything to that nature, 100% of the time, with very few exceptions, I think, they are absolutely positively bots. Like, no question. So you are getting what you pay for when it comes to that kind of advertising. I thought naively that there was a service that guaranteed quote unquote organic followers, organic listens, blah, blah, blah. And again, my understanding is based on the one that I used, and I'm not going to call them out by name, but you can always PM me or email me at timkuligfreemusic@gmail.com, and I'll tell you exactly who I used. But it's anything. If you're online and you do this kind of thing and you see the advertisements for people that are looking to promote you, you'll see them on Twitter, you'll see them on Facebook, you'll see them all over the place. They'll push their agenda and they'll push their advertising, and it's inexpensive and it's reasonable. So you can, for a campaign that costs you 60, 70, 80 bucks a month, you get some, notoriety, you get some spins. And it was my understanding that was all generated organically by getting playlisted on individual playlists through promotion that way, and through other podcasts, other list folks on Spotify. I did this specifically on Spotify. I didn't try it on any other platforms because I was trying to limit my advertising budget to one location to test it out. And I started this back, let's see, I think I started March or April of 2023. So I had it in place for a solid 7 or 8 months before an algorithm picked up that something was going on. And again, I didn't know it was the case. In fact, I did some diligence and research up front because I knew some of these services were bunk. A few years back, I had used somebody on SoundCloud to get some stuff going on, and it made no sense. It literally took some of my tracks and gave them thousands of spins, and I'm like, in like the matter of an hour, and I'm like, that can't be real. There's no way. And look, with any of this stuff, you want an organic following. Even if you get only 2, 3, 4 new people a week, that's 200 people that's 200 people a year, but they're real. The real people that have a real interest in your stuff. I'd rather have that all day long than 1 million followers where 99% of them aren't even real, and they don't engage in your content. They don't engage in what you do. They don't care about what you do. It's just a number. So with socials, I mean, this is a far-reaching, broad subject that I'm kind of doing a rant on this episode, but I'll come back to advertising because I clearly need to do some research and do a reset, a 101 on my advertising goals and approach. So I'm going to look at some other services and highly vet them before engaging in any kind of advertising campaign. So that's going to be the subject of another podcast. But this one is just literally like, holy shit, hold the phone. Let's talk to the fan base and people that are listening about what not to do, because I feel like in real time I want to capture the good and the bad with this podcast. I want to make sure that people know, hey, not everything goes right, you know? And this is one of those cases. This is a case where you're like, damn, man, you know, I spent some money on this thing and then it turned around. Well, let me back up a little bit too. So the way I found out about it is I went to go log into my DistroKid account, which is the way that I publish all my music, self-publishing, and I couldn't jump out of any other screen than a questionnaire screen when I logged into the site. So I literally had to go through this process of explaining myself up front. So they're super serious about false streams and everything else, and rightly so, because Spotify pays per play. So, and it's not a lot of money. I mean, it's like 1/3 of a cent for every spin, but you get that up to the thousands, and that starts to add up. And you do that over, you know, a broad spectrum of, you know, amateur musicians or startups that are using advertising like this. And you're never going to get the amount of money that you're putting into it in spins to pay for it. Like, I figured that math out. It's usually about half or a little bit more that you'd get back. And that was kind of the draw of this particular online advertising campaign, was that, okay, I'm going to shell out some money, but at least half of it I know is a guaranteed back, because I'm going to get these spins, and it's like, you know, there's a guarantee of, you know, so many followers, blah, blah. But again, let me come back to the reality of all this. All of it's bullshit. There's none of those spins and none of those followers are organic like you want. So the advertising up front about that being organic and everything was false, and it was under false pretenses, so it doesn't work that way. But you can understand how somebody would approach the advertising and say, look, okay, so technically it's going to cost me $100 a month. I'm just throwing simple numbers out there. It's going to cost me $100 a month, but, you know, at least 50 or 60 is coming back to me. So really it's costing me 40. So this is a good deal to me. Like, I feel like I'm getting a discount, blah, blah, blah. Right. Well, no. Well, anyway, I had to go through a series of questionnaire on DistroKid. It was a little kind of jarring and scary up front, but I think Spotify is well aware of the fact that there are these predatory companies out there that kind of, you know, put their meat hooks into people like myself and, you know, other startups, if you will, you know, giving them the idea that, like, hey, you know, you're not Britney Spears and you're not Taylor Swift. Let's try to get you some, you know, notoriety and some spins and everything. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I'd like to do some advertising and stuff, but the idea of doing, you know, targeted advertising or just general advertising on Facebook feels daunting, because I don't know who's going to get it and why or whatever. But I think now, knowing what I know now and the situation that I had, I'm definitely going to delve into those a little deeper, even potentially some billboard advertisement. There's this billboard company called Blip, and you can buy micro segments of advertising in places, even in like Times Square, and it's really, really inexpensive. So I just had to figure out a campaign where somebody can throw their phone up and grab a QR code and actually go to my music and make the advertising compelling enough that somebody's gonna be like, oh, that looks interesting, I want to know what the heck that's all about, you know. But the way it came across on DistroKid, the Spotify, the warning is, you know, it's a first strike. So they won't pull your music immediately, but they want to know what's up. They want to know what you did, what happened, and why it happened, because they have their own algorithms and AI and everything that checks for irregular streams, and a couple of my tunes popped for it. So they must have done a routine audit of various artists, and they're like, hey, this doesn't seem right. You need to explain yourself. So I went through a series of questions and a questionnaire, and then they asked me what company I was using. So I gave them all the information, And, one of their big requests right up front was you need to stop this immediately because it's not right. And it is 100% bots and BS. So I immediately reached out to the company I was using and asked them to cancel immediately. I sent it via email. I did it via their online thing, and I even logged into the portal and canceled the service. So I got a couple follow-up emails from them, and I said basically, like, you need to cease and desist right away, or I'm contacting my attorney. And they asked what the nature of it was, and I responded that I got a violation flag from Spotify, and I had no response back. So clearly that's what they do. Clearly they do exactly what Spotify said that they do. No explanation, no apology, no offer for money back. But, lesson learned, and moving on. But I also took the time in the Spotify, or not the Spotify, the DistroKid response to Spotify, and explained to him, look, whether it's naivety or just trusting in the nature of an advertising company that claimed to be doing things organically, that's what I did. And had I known that it was, nefarious in any way, shape, or form, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. So I've ceased and desisted right away, and I apologized profusely. So no harm, no foul at this point. And going forward, I'm finding other ways to make this happen. Make the advertising happen, push the brand, push the interest in the music, and, lesson learned. But I'd hate for somebody else out there that might be following me, listening to this podcast, not to know that that is not a way to get an edge on your follows, your streams, your following. It's not a viable solution. So I'm going to take the time over the next month or so and do some really solid, hardcore research on how an independent artist like myself can go out there and do some targeted advertising without spending $1 billion, because you can spend money on advertising and it can add up really quickly. And the idea is that, you want those dollars to make sense. You want those dollars to make sense in the sense that it gets you additional followers, it gets you additional interest and subscribers and everything. But you want people that want to stick around. You want people that your music resonates with, and that really enjoy what you're doing and end up using your stuff. Like in my case with the Creative Commons music, they actually use your stuff and promote you automatically. There's an organic thing that's happened to me over the last 2.5, 3 years with some of the people that use my music a lot. They just pop on social media with me, with my stuff, and they're just happy that I do what I do, and it kind of promotes itself. But that takes time. That takes time to build a fan base of people that are like, man, you're like the go-to for, horror, or you're the go-to for these ambient ones, or, whatever. Some people just, they just salivate when I say I'm going to release another dark, dark ambient or horror album, because they're like, oh yeah, I love that stuff. Your stuff's creepy. I love it. So yeah, there's that, but again, that takes time. Like, stuff's got to bake in out there. I always call it that. Like, you put stuff out in the universe and in the internet, and it just takes time for people to find you, and then you create a following, and then they want more and more and more. So, but in this case, if you're a musician and you want to do advertising and you want to make things happen for yourself, stay away from these stream guarantee services, these advertising companies that claim they'll get you on a playlist. They'll get you playlisted, they'll get you streamed, they'll get you followers, blah, blah. All a bunch of crap. So stay away from it. Don't waste your money. You're better off taking out ads in a newspaper than you are. Probably not. Dead medium. but probably because you're not going to get the flags. You're not going to get the false following and the false sense of accomplishment that you'd get from these advertisers that kind of give you a sense that something's happening when it's really not. So stay away from it. Stay away from it. Don't make my mistake. I'll certainly never make that one again. And I just thought it was really important to catch up with you folks quickly this week on that. Plus, it's a holiday week. I actually didn't have a big show planned for this week, but having this fall in my lap, I was like, you know what? This won't take long to talk to everybody about, and I feel like it's an important and resonating subject that people need to know. So in closing, do not get involved with an online streaming advertising company for your music or your content, because they all use bots. They all use some kind of AI that promotes your music inorganically, and you're not building a fan base. You're not building a following. You're getting a pay to play. You're getting a bunch of streams and a number tick that at the end of the day doesn't mean anything, because you're left with an empty bucket of false followers and pretend followers. And that's not what you want. What you want is to build a community. So build a community the right way. And in the next several weeks, I'll have another episode out about proper advertising and how to get into it in a way that promotes you and promotes your work and your art in a way that really generates a movement and a desire to come back to you and to your work and to support it and to celebrate it. I want to thank everybody for stopping back in again this week at the Tim Kulik Free Music Podcast. I hope if you live in the States that you had a great Thanksgiving week and a good kickoff to the holiday season. It's actually Friday, Black Friday today. So I hope anybody out there shopping today gets themselves some decent deals. Don't forget Cyber Monday, because that's also a big deal day as well. And I look forward to talking to everybody very, very soon. Thanks for checking in.